When we talk about macro intent versus micro intent, just want to provide some definition and difference between the two. The macro intent are broad categories like informational, transactional, commercial, whereas the micro intent are specific nuanced user needs within those broader categories that reflect the particular context of the search or a particular preference that the user might have. Searching for general information on a topic or searching for a very specific tutorial. Most SEO consultants and marketing consultants will advise you to focus your strategy and your approach in creating targeted content that caters to specific queries, specific context to enhance the relevance of your content and the relevance of your brand appearing in a certain context. And of course, that focusing on long tail keywords and specific phrases allow us to capture a lot more highly convertible audience that is really ready to take the next step. How can we practically utilize the data that we do have to classify search intent automatically? We can do something like query-based text analysis or rule-based classification, which is based on keywords that indicate macro intents. Those could be keywords for informational intent like how, why, does, when, and so on. For commercial searches, it might be things like versus, cheap, comparison, and for transactional, it could be things like recommendation, and so on. You can then map your search intent category of the macro intent with other metrics too. You can make it industry specific as well. Intent is expressed very differently in different industries. For instance, transactional intent can look very differently for these three industries. In e-commerce, it could look like keywords like buy, price, purchase, pricing, cheap, expensive, and so on. In SaaS, it could be things like features, alternatives, support, sign up, demo request, free trial, or even API key. In the services industry, the keywords that could indicate transactional intent could be things like call, book, contract, reach, find, and so on. Definitely consider the nuances of the industry as well. You can indicate personas from this too, which are one type of micro intent that we can use from the classification. Just to give you an example, transactional intent can look very differently for different user personas. And for instance, if you have an affluent user persona, the traits might be that they value premium quality, luxury, and exclusivity. And some of the keywords that you might use to identify this kind of user persona would be things like luxury, high-end, gourmet, custom tailored, things like that. And if you have the cheapskate, which is a completely opposite type of persona, they are highly budget conscious, they would be seeking discount, bargains, and free options. So some of the keywords that you might use to pinpoint this exact persona in your target market might be deals under 300 or coupons or cheap or secondhand, affordable, free shipping, budget, things like that. If you find these keywords in the queries that have a very high volume, and if these align with your brand, then you might be able to add these as user personas in your content as well to speak more directly to these users. You can also use the SERP features and the SERP analysis as well as a way to identify search intent from the data that you do have. SERP features can be very generic indicators of macro and micro intent, though I do want to say that this is a backward-looking approach. So you're relying on what Google thinks the intent is for the particular query, as opposed to working from the user with a user-centric approach. Each SERP snippet can be classified or categorized in a particular category, with knowledge cards, for instance, appearing in navigational, paid product panels, or reviews appearing in commercial or transactional categories. Tool providers that do provide search intent as a metric in their datasets do actually use part of their classification model being the SERP features that are indicated in the SERP. The SERP features can be indicators of desired content formats, which again can be an indicator for a micro intent. So based on the domain that's ranking and the type of a SERP feature that it is, we can see the kind of content formats that are most likely going to satisfy search intent based on Google's information. And that, of course, can be paired with the extraction that you can do based on the query text as well. Specifically, if users have indicated that they want picture-based content or video-based content in the query. SERP features can vary in terms of appearance on certain devices, which can be another indicator of how useful these particular content formats are for desktop versus mobile if you do want to build a custom metric for incorporating SERP features as part of your search intent classification models. And beyond SERP features, you can actually use the SERP analysis or classifying the ranked pages. Again, you can classify based on the content type that you have identified, like tutorial, how to post, guide, ebook, podcast, product page, landing page, and so on. You can also analyze the pages that are ranking as part of the SERP for a certain keyword, and you can classify the intent that way using the content from those pages in order to understand what kind of intent is Google serving for this particular query via the content. You can make this landing page specific too. You can optimize the site's main pages based on the type of intent that they serve. If you see resource pages, those should be optimized, of course, for informational intent, and reverse engineering that logic for your competitors as well should point you in the direction that this query has predominantly informational intent. If you see mostly company pages ranking, then that is navigational intent, and so on. Of course, you will have some content formats like white papers and case studies and competitive comparisons, which will be in those niche intent categories. Based on the same logic, starting from the queries ranked for successful examples of landing pages in your niche, you can reverse engineer the type of copy or content that they have used on the page and the intent of the queries ranked.